God just knew that I needed to see this documentary, but I highly suggest you all go watch it. The Stringer is out on Netflix right now, and I watched it and I could not stop until the very end. During the Vietnam War in June of 1972, a Stringer photographer took the very famous, well-known photograph called Napalm Girl. A photographer won a Pulitzer Prize for this photograph. But it turns out Nick Ut, the photographer that claims he took the photo, did not take the photo. God just knew that this documentary was exactly what I needed to see exactly at this moment, and I highly suggest everybody else go watch it as well. Nick Ut, the photographer that was said to have taken Napalm Girl, is not the photographer of Napalm Girl. The award-winning photograph that changed the course of history, changed the course of war history, really drove home the realization of not only child victims, but victims, innocent civilians of war. But this goes down to the very core corruption of not just war in and of itself. Rich men using poor men to die for their selfish needs, their political and their diplomatic wants, their theft of a territory. The AP whistleblower who actually comes out in the documentary asks for redemption, begs for forgiveness, and is asking for mercy to correct a wrong that has been over 53 years now, living and breathing as if it is fundamentally the truth. He not only comes forward to tell the truth that the photographer was a Stringer photographer, and it was attributed to Nick Ut, even though it wasn't his photograph. You can see from the footage, all of the video footage and all of the other subsequent photos that other photographers had taken, as well as Nick Ut, that Nick Ut was not anywhere near where the shot for Napalm Girl really occurred. The World Press Photo Foundation, for the first time in 70 years, suspended the credit of Napalm Girl to Nick Ut, pending this investigation, this documentary. And this isn't just about the importance of credit, the importance of authorship, even though AP may own the copyright and the image itself because they purchased it. The truth is the truth, and the truth has been rewritten for over 53 years, but not anymore. The truth coming out only hurts those who have been complicit in the lie, but a voice in justice is given to those who were denied it. And that, to me, is not only the most important, it is the most imperative of any story, of any war, of any historical point, of any true crime case. The truth. But again, as I said, this always comes back to the core corruption of rich men or men in power being able to use poor men, men that die in vain for their war. And then they go on to rewrite history the way that they think it should be remembered, not fundamentally the way it happened. And that is why the truth is imperative. But it's not only imperative, it is demanded. I have two great uncles who died in service, one in World War II and the other in the Korean War. But my uncle, my mother's oldest sister's husband, who just passed away a couple years ago, he served 2 tours in Vietnam. He was a disabled Army veteran that served 2 tours in Vietnam as a combat engineer. He was given full military rights, of course, but he and my aunt are buried in Maryland. My uncle was also exposed to Agent Orange and survived. But after his first tour in Vietnam, he came back home and seen that his brother was off to tour. And instead of his little brother going, he decided to take his place and do a second tour. And they approved him. And despite being exposed to Agent Orange, he was the toughest mofo I have ever known. But he was also the most hilarious, the most compassionate, the most family-oriented, and he was one of my 2 favorite uncles. So the things that I know, the things that I have grown up with, knowing since 1985, the stories that he would tell us, the things that he's seen, that he lived through, that he endured, and what it was like for him to adjust coming back after 2 tours in Vietnam, sheds a whole different light with this documentary. And I have a great uncle who survived his naval service in World War II, went to Coast Guard, then Army. My great uncle Francis died in World War II, but my great uncle Clifford, he died in Korea in 1952, in service also. So the documentary sheds a whole new light on truth. What seems like a very minute, itty-bitty, tiny, insignificant little detail being changed from the truth to a lie, and what it does over 5 decades. The World Press Photo Foundation is setting a precedent when, in the first time over 70 years, they had suspended a credit to a photographer to a certain photo. Because that is finally somebody coming forward and trying to right a wrong. And the man who really took the picture, along with his brother, had to remain in silence for all these years, in fear that they would lose their job, their livelihood, their living. It brings a whole new level of corruption, especially in relation to rich men's wars. The truth coming out only affects, reverberates, ricochets on those who have been living under a lie. But the truth is, Nick Ut did not take the photograph known as Napalm Girl. And the documentary shows you exactly who did. The photograph that has rippled throughout history, showing us the unnecessary act of war. And the victims are usually civilians, innocent women, innocent children. And how that war affects those victims. War photographers and war journalists are extremely important, but when we can't even trust them to deliver the truth, what can we trust? Because they all answer to organizations who are supposed to deliver the truth. And when they fail to do that, is it any wonder that nobody trusts mainstream media? Nobody. The same way nobody trusts a government, let alone a big government. And the fact that Gary Knight and the whistleblower were strong enough to not only seek the truth, but to tell the truth after so long. It shows and it proves that it never rests, it never stops, it never sleeps. The truth is always just the truth. It's not a revision. It's not a side note. It's not a proofread. It's not a rewrite. The truth is as it happened. The truth is what really occurred. The truth is the truth. In the way that this documentary sheds a light on all of it, and you'd think, oh, that's insignificant. It's just a photograph, right? It changed the course of history because it changed the way the world really sees war. From a civilian standpoint, from a victim's standpoint, from a child's standpoint. Now, the photograph Napalm Girl didn't end the Vietnam War, but it did change the course of history because it really drove home visually the reality of war, the harming and the death of innocent children. That is when anti-war sentiment really ramped up, especially anti-war protests. Now, Vietnam would continue all the way until 1975. During the documentary, I noticed something that was very peculiar to me. Nick Ut declined any kind of involvement in the documentary. However, there are little disclaimers and updates at the very, very end in text only. But they did show a clip of him, how he says he took the photograph. And in that, he talks about having a driver and other people arriving. And then he mentions the little girl that's in the photograph, as well as 2 other kids. He puts them in a van, and then he drives, allegedly, the little girl to a hospital. Now, the girl's grandmother says something different years ago in an interview. But it begs the question, how did he have 2 different vehicles? You can only drive one at a time. So there's something fishy with his story. but I highly suggest you go watch. Let me know your thoughts down below.